Something on the inside, working on the outside. Oh, what a change.
I probably have over 20 years of wreckage of drug and alcohol abuse, of just a chaotic life, self-destruction, so to speak. With having so many consequences from bad choices I made in life, somebody like me, I didn't even know where to start over again. I needed a whole new approach, a whole new outlook, a way of thinking and acting. Total renewal of mind and spirit.
The responsibility tool concerns my ability to respond effectively in the midst of personal crisis. Breaking down the word responsibility helps us understand the meaning of the responsibility tool. Instead of respondability, we flip the parts of the word around, ability to respond. Jesus' parable of the houses illustrates the ability to respond effectively in the midst of personal crisis. Jesus describes stormy conditions, wind, rain, floods, beating against two houses. One house collapses, the other house remains standing. The storms represent the crises of the individual life. The houses represent individuals in the midst of these personal crises. The point of the parable is that the houses stand or fall based on their foundation. Individuals stand or fall based on their foundational principles. The house built on sand fell. That house is like an individual trying to live without values and principles. Such people collapse under the pressures of crises and troubles. The house built on a rock withstood the storm. They are like people who live life according to principles and values and standards and convictions. They have a moral core, moral fiber, strength on the inside, which makes them sturdy and strong enough to weather any crisis and any trouble. Your ability to make it through whatever crisis you're facing depends on the principles you possess on the inside, not what storm is raging on the outside. So, are you like a house built on rock? Or are you like a house built on sand?
With the responsibility tool, with making notes of rights and wrongs, good choices and bad choices, and the result of those choices, and that I have a choice. I can make the outcome different by the choice that I make. The responsibility tool was definitely the start of putting the other steps into action with me.
Principle number 2. The key to the responsibility tool is to take ownership of my personal crisis by my attitude. Attitude determines approach. Approach determines success or failure. Attitude determines approach. Approach determines success or failure. Your way out of crisis starts with you taking ownership of that crisis. Your attitude must say, my crisis belongs to me, no one else. I'm responsible for it. The story of a father with two sons highlights the importance of this attitude. The sons were identical in appearance, but they were opposite in attitude. One was always positive, the other was always negative. So much so, the father decided to call in a psychiatrist to examine the two boys. So the shrink set up a test. He put the negative son in a room full of toys, gadgets, and playthings. And then the psychiatrist put the positive son in a room full of horse manure. 1 hour passed. The father and the shrink went first to check on the negative son and found him crying. "What's wrong?" the psychiatrist asked the boy, and the boy responded, "I was afraid I might break something, so I didn't touch anything." Then the father and the shrink went to check on the positive son in the room full of the horse manure. They opened up the door and found him having a great time. He was playing, throwing, swimming, diving in and out of the manure. The psychiatrist stopped and said, "What's happening in here?" And the boy responded, "With all this manure in here, I figured there had to be a pony in here somewhere." The moral of the story is simply this: don't look for the problem, look for the pony. Take ownership of your manure. No matter how bad it smells, you're responsible for it. So work through it with a positive attitude. Don't complain, don't gripe, don't feel sorry for yourself, don't have a pity party. Look for the pony. That's the step that prepares you to move permanently beyond your personal crisis, which brings us to our next principle, which is the chief principle of the responsibility tool.
My attitude to myself is surprisingly so about face, because it was my attitude that kept me in my drug addiction for so long, being negative and nothing's ever going to change, and no one else is going to change, and why should I? And then my situation was I had 4 children. Their father died when my youngest was 3 months old and the oldest was 8, and I just spiraled downward.
With this holistic hardware, with this teaching, with the biblical teaching, with the prayers and the Sunday school, I began to focus on the positive things in life. I decided that all this negative things I was doing, that it was not of God, that it was not me, because by nature, I feel I was one of the best guys in the world. So I began to focus on the positive things.
Principle number 3. The chief principle of the responsibility tool is a 3-step strategy. Look back, get out, take note. There are 3 steps in the chief principle. It starts with looking back, getting out, and then finally taking note. I state these steps metaphorically, but they are actually questions that you must ask yourself to check your attitude, to make sure you are prepared mentally to resolve all the challenges of your personal crisis. Let's consider these steps one at a time. Principle number 4. I look back to figure out how I got into my crisis. I asked myself the question, why am I in crisis? You have to look back to figure out how you got into it and ask yourself the question, why am I in crisis? Crisis is a turning point in life, for better or for worse. Your attitude determines the direction you're going to take. Are you going back into trouble or forward into progress? Before you can really move forward, you have to ask the question, how did I get here in the first place? Why am I in crisis? This is the principle of honest assessment. Because before you can do anything else, you have to honestly assess your situation. Then you're able to move forward strategically. This principle of honest assessment is illustrated by the parable Jesus told of the prodigal son. Jesus describes a young man who leaves his home with all of his inheritance, but then squanders it through an irresponsible lifestyle. He ends up homeless and hungry, trying to find food in a pigsty. But then he takes the critical first step. He looks back. He asks himself the question, how did I get here? Why am I in crisis? He has that reflective moment, and that becomes the key to his progress. Because then he recalls, I had more than enough to eat in my father's house. Why am I here starving? And it's a step of honest assessment that leads him to a decision to leave his desperate circumstances and return to his father's house, thus resolving his crisis. Like the prodigal son, your honest assessment is the key. You must honestly answer the question, why? And the why of your crisis then becomes the basis of your plan to move beyond that crisis, because that plan becomes based on truth and not on excuse, on fact and not on fiction. Once you honestly assess, you can then move on to the next principle.
But I was in a big denial. I did not believe that I was in a crisis which left me to homelessness until I got found a place in a shelter. So it really had to help me change my attitude. I had to really change my attitude from negative to positive, which really helped me to understand that what I was doing was not right.
Well, I've always had a positive attitude, but when I first came to JOS Plus, I still wasn't at the point where I was taking responsibility for what I had done. I mean, it was always someone else, but I was the one that actually did it. So I guess the responsibility tool helped me to see that I was the one that was responsible. And it gave me a better positive attitude towards what I've done because I got over it.
Principle number 5 of the responsibility tool says, I get out in a responsible way. I ask myself the question, what do I have to do to fix my crisis? What do I have to do to fix it? You must take action to fix your crisis. It won't get fixed while you're listening to music or watching TV or hanging out with your friends. This is the principle of personal initiative. It's imperative that you do something, that you take the steps, that you take the right kind of action. But it has to be the right kind of action in order to avoid jumping from the frying pan into the fire, as King David did. David, the great Old Testament leader, went from a bad crisis to a worse crisis because he violated this principle. One day, David decided to stay home from battle, and he saw a beautiful woman named Bathsheba bathing on a rooftop. He fell to his lust, committed adultery with her, and she became pregnant. But then his crisis deepened. Uriah, Bathsheba's husband, was a soldier in David's army. So to get out of his crisis, David decided that he would send instructions to his military commander to put Uriah on the front line and pull the rest of the troops back, making Uriah a casualty of the battlefield. But David's deception eventually came out. So you see, David went from bad to worse. He went from being in a frying pan to jumping into the fire. He went from being an adulterer to a murderer. And this resulted in a reign of terror upon himself, upon his family, and upon his entire kingdom, even into future generations. You see, personal initiative is essential, but it must be as a result of your honest assessment. Don't rush. It takes time to fall into crisis of the broken life. So take your time to chart your way out of it. You can't afford to make any more mistakes.
I didn't change right away. I continued my downward spiral, and I'm telling you, it was a long process, and it's still, even today, a process. As long as I stay up front, honest and open with my husband, my mother, my spiritual mother, about all the things that I'm feeling, keep it in prayer to the Lord. He helps me release it and give it to Him.
The last principle of the responsibility tool says, I take note to learn the lesson of the crisis. I ask myself the question, what did I learn about myself from this crisis? You have to take note to learn the lesson of the crisis and ask yourself, what did I learn about me, myself, from this crisis? This is the principle of the revolving door, how to stop it. The revolving door symbolizes a crisis that never ends, that keeps going on and on and on, despite your best efforts to stop it. But you keep making the same mistake, ending up in the same predicament over and over and over again. You must learn the lesson of the crisis. And you do that by becoming a student of your own life. You've got to study your life. You've got to draw on the lessons that you're going through, take hold of them, grasp them, dig into them. Really, really embrace them so you can keep yourself out of the syndrome of the revolving door. The Old Testament prophet Jonah exemplifies the proper practice of this principle of taking note. Jonah initially didn't get it right, but he learned the lesson of his crisis. Jonah received his divine commission to go to Nineveh, but he disobeyed and went in the opposite direction and ended up in a big crisis in the belly of the whale. But he got through that crisis, and the word of the Lord came to Jonah a second time. God is indeed a God of second chances. And because he had taken note and learned the lesson of his crisis, Jonah got it right this time. He obeyed the divine commission. He went forward into Nineveh and fulfilled his mission there. He took note, and he was finally able to put his crisis to an end, stop that revolving door, never having to go through that trouble again. Whatever crisis you're facing, make sure you take the 3 steps of the responsibility tool and you apply them. First, you look back like the prodigal son. Next, get out, but not like David. And finally, take note like Jonah. These 3 steps are your strategy for permanently moving beyond the crisis of the broken life, making your house of progress to be built to last. Not on sand, but on rock.
When you feel like your life has become one way, that it's just been in one direction and you can't see it going in any direction, and that it's either all or nothing, or maybe it's been so long that you just don't do anything about it. I know how applying those principles, those tools, how applying those little by little make a huge impact on big changes in your life. Little applications of those tools, a little bit at a time, they end up making huge changes.
Yeah, I understand. Fine. I'll call someone else.
Hard to Employment Agency, Thelma speaking.
Hello. Y'all got any jobs down there?
Well, what is your name, sir?
Leroy Chestnut. Look, y'all got any jobs down there?
I can't tell you that until you come in.
Come in where?
You have to come into our offices. First, you fill out our standard application and bring at least 2 forms of identification, preferably 3. And you must have your birth certificate.
Birth certificate? Where am I supposed to find my birth certificate?
You must bring it with you. Now, if you can't find it, you must bring your passport or social security card. Then you meet with our employment counselor. She'll put you through a series of assessment tests. Then you take our classes, resume preparation, interviewing skills.
Hold up 1 minute. Just answer one question for me. When do I get a job?
Well, our average placement here at Hard to Employ is 2 to 3 months. Depending on...
Don't believe it. 3 months. I ain't got that kind of time to waste. Forget about them. I'm gonna go right to the source. Forget about these agencies.
Eternal Eye Security.
I'd like to speak to somebody in charge.
You're talking to him. What can I do for you?
I'm looking for a job. I've been working in security for 6 years.
You may be in luck. We're looking to hire. A couple of our best people recently moved on. Who did you work for last?
Ever Alert.
That's a good company. What happened?
What do you mean, what happened?
I mean, why did you leave?
Circumstances.
What circumstances?
I was let go.
Why did they let you go?
None of your business.
It is my business if you want to work here. I need some references.
I said none of your business. Your company. I'm a great worker. They'll never find anybody like me. trying to get in my business. Yeah.
Hey, big brother, what's going on?
Hi, sis. What's happening? Nothing's happening here, girl.
Found the new job yet?
I'm making the phone calls, but these people just don't want to do the right thing.
Is it them or you?
Say what?
I've been meaning to talk to you about this. I'm your sister, so I'm telling you like it is. You know, I was there the day you got laid off. You've been blaming everybody else. It was really your fault.
Look, yo, don't even go there. That man got up in my face. I had to hit him.
That man got in your face because you got in his face first. And you got in his face first because you were mad that he got the promotion you wanted.
Yo, listen, why don't you stop lying on me?
No, it's true. I'm not arguing with you today. I told you before. I'm telling you one last time. Sister to brother, you've got a bad attitude. Always blaming someone else for what went wrong with you. You've got to take responsibility for what goes wrong with you. You've got to change your attitude. Or you're going to keep losing jobs and you won't find a new one worth having. Don't you know that attitude determines approach and approach determines success or failure? Get a new attitude. There, I said it, but be mad at me if you want to, but you're my brother, so I had to tell you the real deal. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, I'm okay.
Cool, talk to you.
I got a bad attitude. I got a bad attitude. I gotta change my attitude. Gotta change my attitude. Amen. Amen.
Eternal Eye Security.
Good morning. Good afternoon. We spoke briefly a few minutes ago.
Oh, not you again. I don't have time for jerks like you who call to waste my time.
Please, don't hang up. Don't hang up. I just want to, first of all, I want to apologize for the way I acted before.
You got a problem. What is your problem?
I had a problem. I decided to let it go. That's behind me now. What I'd like to do is to come down at your earliest convenience and tell you about my experience in security.
Here we go. When your life's a mess, what you gon' need? Holistic hardware. And when you drowning in sorrows, what's gonna help you breathe? Holistic hardware. There's 10 tools to help you be free inside. Holistic hardware. Ayo, Doc, tell them what tools it is to help you succeed inside. Holistic hardware. Part of making it in this life is spirituality. Given by Christ, anything less is a technicality. Whatever you use to fill that void can't blend with God, baby. It needs to be destroyed. Whether it's drugs, drinking, false religion, ain't got nothing on Christ like an eagle fighting a pigeon. I'm trying to make you think twice if you listen. Switch sides and get down with Jesus, cause he makes all the difference. It ain't just about heaven and hell. He gives life to smart options than being dead and in jail. Held hostage by addictions. If you want him to stop, then you gon' need the healer of afflictions in the HOLISTIC and the power of God. His son CHRIST. Give him a chance and to rearrange your entire set. When your life's a mess, what you gon' need? Holistic hardware. And when you drowning in sorrows, what's gonna help you breathe? Holistic hardware. There's 10 tools to help you be free inside. Holistic hardware. Ayo, Doc, tell them what tools it is to help you succeed inside. Holistic hardware. Let's go.